Communications of the Legislative Black Caucus. My name is Representative William Bowden, House District 62, which encompasses South Fulton and parts of Douglas County. We're here today to talk about the GLB signing and filing a hate crime bill. The name of the hate crime bill is called the Violent Hate Crimes Act. We have already filed a bill in the House of Representatives. The sponsor is here today and she will speak next. Her name is Representative Karen Bennett. The House bill number is HB 663. And I will not delay any further and I will have Representative Karen Bennett to speak at this time.
Good afternoon. It's my delight, before we get started, to call to stand with us the Bishop Reginald T. Jackson, the presiding prelate of the 6th Episcopal District, which encompasses all of Georgia. Bishop Jackson is the presiding prelate of over 500 churches around in the state. And since he has been in the state of Georgia for the past couple of years, he has continued to make his mark in terms of supporting the public, the community, the church, and all aspects of public policy in addition to religious life. Bishop Jackson, if you would come and stand with us, and you will speak at this time.
To the members of the Georgia Legislative Black Caucus and to all of you, my brothers and my sisters, I stand today on behalf of faith leaders across the state of Georgia in support of this hate crimes legislation. Next week, we will celebrate the birth of Dr. Martin Luther King, Jr., an honored son of the state of Georgia. In 1968, the night before his death, Dr. King said the ultimate measure of a man is not where he stands at times of convenience and comfort, but at times of challenge and controversy. In such times, cowardice asks, is it safe? Expediency asks, is it politic? Vanity asks, is it popular? But conscience asks, is it right? We join with the Black Caucus today in asking, is it right that Georgia is one of only 5 states in the nation which does not have hate crimes legislation? In a time when hate, violence, and racism are increasing, at a time when 72% of Americans say race relations in the country are worse, and at a time when number 45 says there are some good people among the Klan and supremacists, we say with our conscience, it is not right. And it is time that Georgia join the other 45 states in having hate crimes legislation. Faith leaders said to the Black Caucus in August of last year that if they sponsored hate crimes legislation, we would get faith leaders across the state to stand behind them in support of that legislation. We reaffirm our commitment to stand with them today. We call upon the members of the Senate and the House to support this legislation. We will meet with Governor Deal, Lieutenant Governor Cagle, and Speaker Ralston to get their support of this legislation. Their support will make this legislation easier to pass. Now, we understand the environment in which we live. There are cowards who will say, is it safe in this environment to support this legislation? There are some elected officials who place expediency above principle, and they will ask, is it politically wise? And there are those who wait to see which way the wind blows, to see whether or not the polls say this legislation is popular. Our position is it right? And we believe that it is right that there be a law that says that hate, violence, racism against people on the basis of race, color, creed, gender, sexual orientation, that is wrong. And so we push that this become lawful. A colleague of mine, Bishop Frank Curtis Cummings, has a saying which says, there's no right way to do wrong. And so we call upon the Georgia legislature to support this legislation because our conscience tells us it's right. Let me thank the Georgia Legislative Black Caucus for sponsoring this legislation, and we commit to you our full support. Thank you. Sure, I'll stay up here.
At this time, I will introduce our Vice Chairman of the GLBC, Representative Sandra Scott.
Good afternoon. The current political climate in D.C. has created an environment of behavior not seen openly in decades in this country. Behavior that was previously unacceptable has come out into the open, threatening the safety and well-being of our citizens. The Violent Hate Crimes Act will provide protection from such actions directed at them by others based on the color of their skin or how they choose to live. This is not a partisan issue. This is a people issue, and the people need to be able to feel safe in their communities. By providing clear-cut and strong punishments for violent hate crimes, law enforcement is empowered to protect those citizens who are targeted victims of violent hate crimes. Public safety is first and foremost our desire when it comes to the health and well-being of all of our citizens. I ask you today to please stand with the Georgia Legislative Black Caucus and fight for communities free from hate. Let our voices be heard. Thank you.
Now I will introduce our chairman, Senator Lester Jackson. Senator Lester Jackson will also be sponsoring a companion bill to House Bill 663 in the Senate.
Good afternoon. Yesterday, the Georgia Legislative Black Caucus introduced House Bill 633 and Senate Bill 316, the Violent Hate Crime Act. It affirms that our belief that crime driven by hate and malice requires serious penalties that deters people and provides justice to its victims. Georgia is only one of 35 states that don't have a hate crime legislation on its books. And we intend to change that in 2018. In 2016, 6,000 incidents of hate crimes were reported in this country. 58% was based on race, 21% based on religion, and 16% based on sexual orientation. Should this be allowed? Both historically and presently, crime has been a tool of terror to its victims. Hate crime has been a tool of terror to communities. In 2018, Georgia stands firm and says no more hate crime. And if you do it, there will be a penalty. Over the past 5 years, Georgia has made a name for itself as the best place to do business. We welcome a growing and more diverse population. We must ensure that every person, every group is not only known as the best place to do business, but also the best place to raise a family. The Georgia Legislative Black Caucus saying in 2018, let Georgia be the best place to raise a family. Let Georgia be the best place for a community to feel safe. Let's say no to hate. Let's stand with hate crime. Let's stand with the bishop of the AME Church, the bishop of the CME Church, and all religious leaders across this state that's saying now is a time we stand to end hate crime. Thank you very much. We will now take questions.
Quick question, clarification.
30, oh,
45. 45. It's 45.
45 that don't have any hate. Oh, no. 45 states have hate crime legislation on the books. Right. We are one of 5 that do not have hate crime.
Can you talk about some of the specifics of the bill, some of the extra penalties that would be tacked on as far as when a crime is decided to be a hate crime?
Thank you. House Bill 663, sponsored on behalf of the Georgia Legislative Black Caucus, makes hate crime in and of itself an offense. In the past, or there are some thoughts that offenses can be tried, and then after the offense has been tried, then it will be decided whether or not it was a hate crime. We say no. Georgia Legislative Black Caucus say no. Hate crime offense can be prosecuted from the beginning as what it is, and that is a hate crime of offenses intentionally targeted to certain groups of people.
Quick question over here. How does this differ from the bill that was filed by Representative Hansen about a week ago? She filed a hate crime bill. What's the difference in the two?
House Bill 663 is very different in that that bill is a bifurcated bill, meaning that any criminals would have to first be prosecuted to the nature of their crime. Hate crime would only come in after they are found guilty. House Bill 663 is different in that the Georgia Legislative Black Caucus insists that hate crime in and of itself is an offense. And so the distinctive difference is that our prosecutors will be given the tools that they need to bring criminals to justice under the hate crime legislation.
And why do you think it's better to have it be a separate offense than to be at the time of sentencing after a separate crime has been?
The hate crime legislation, House Bill 633, raises the floor for minimal sentencing at the discretion of the judge. And so rather than to incur upon taxpayers, families, victims, a dual process, we feel that the hate crime in and of itself can be prosecuted initially by our state prosecutors.
And hate crime would be a felony?
Hate crime, depending on the offense, could be a misdemeanor or a felony. It depends on the nature of the offense.
Does it also codify the length of sentence?
Minimum of 3 to 20, which it raises the bottom. However, it's at the discretion. That 3 is not a mandatory sentence. 3 to 20 is mandatory. However, it's at the discretion of the judge to determine how that penalty is carried out.
How do we prove that the intent is hate?
We have an attorney.
Yeah,
that can
I
answer
get.
that.
Now, I guess my day job, I am a lawyer, so the intent is going to be found by the jury themselves. The good thing about this bill, as Representative Bennett has stated before, is that from the onset, if it's a misdemeanor, the crime is going to be an accusation. If it's a felony, the crime is going to be an indictment. So therefore, it is a clear, defined indictment or accusation on what the individual is being charged with. So if they go to a jury trial, they have to be sentenced under that elevated terms of jail or imprisonment. With this particular bill, House Bill 663, each crime itself is looked at and elevated on the particular crime itself. So what we want to do is, even in a plea situation, the individual will have to plead under the elevated terms of the indictment or accusation. Because under the sentence enhancement, if you don't have a jury trial, it'll never go to the jury. Therefore, the judge will never make that determination whether this crime was a hate crime or not.
We see a number of these efforts to pass hate crime legislation. What's your confidence that this one actually passes and actually makes movement?
In the past, in the year of 2000, there was a hate crime piece of legislation that was passed by both Georgia House and Senate. And then in 2004, the Supreme Court of Georgia deemed it to be unconstitutional because it did not describe or define bias. In this legislation, the biases are clearly defined and the target audiences are clearly stated.
Is there any fear that there'll be confusion between 663 and Representative Hanson's bill?
Well, we're going to do our best to make sure that there's no confusion. We stand on the merits of our bill, and along with the citizens in the state of Georgia, we ask for our day to have a hearing, and then it can be clearly, any confusions can be taken care of at that time.
The sentencing.
Yes.
Does the underlying crime have to have the conviction for the hate crime, or is that separate? So technically, one could be acquitted. The underlying.
Yes. What I would say with our bill 663 is that it's actually in the statute itself. So a crime where a person has been targeted because of their race, gender classification is going to be the basis for the DA or the solicitor to either indict or accuse the case. So from the onset, the notice requirement is going to be taken care of because the individual already know what they're going to be indicted on. Now, I think another one of the differences in our bill is that we don't have mandatory minimums in our bill. So our bill is a little bit different from the other bill that you mentioned earlier, 660. So we want to make sure that our bill is clearly defined.
But basically, it's like if someone is charged with assault.
Yes.
And the hate crime has been committed.
Yes.
The assault is indicted, and the hate crime comes with it on top.
No,
or-
it's actually going to be a separate subsection. So you have a regular assault, and then you have a hate crime assault. Like you have a regular battery, and you have a hate crime battery with different penalty levels.
In closing, I am proud to stand with the Georgia Legislative Black Caucus that's going to stand up for the people of Georgia and fight hate. 2018, we want all of Georgia to stand with us to fight hate. Hate crime affects all of us, every community, every county, every city. We all can be potential victims. Let's protect our citizens. Let's make this state a state that we can be proud of in 2018. I implore you, let's go out, down with hate, and let's pass these hate crime legislations. Thank you very much.